Oh, Mr. Haydad, let's go
Yes.
Mississippi State weekend recruiting recap. Let's start with the portal and then work our way to high school, because this was a big high school on-campus weekend.
Feels backwards, but okay.
State.
Yeah.
Well, no, I just thought we would start with the stuff that had a chance to be more of an immediate impact.
Yeah, and, I think we talked about it for about 3.5 minutes on a Friday show because they decided to drop that on us. We haven't had that, to my knowledge, since we've been on the show, where we got the absolute last 5 minutes of the show and we get big news happening for us. But Baylor quarterback Blake Shapen, who, to my knowledge, I talked to some people, and we're talking about quarterbacks that State was going to have some interest in, might be some mutual interest there. That was not a name that popped up in any discussions that I had previously had, which goes to show I don't know a whole lot, I guess. But, he's headed to Mississippi State. Was told that there was a lot of interest on Shapen's behalf to come to Mississippi State and work with Jeff Lebby. And when that interest was reciprocated, the offer was extended, and it was pretty much an immediate commitment. So he is headed to Starkville. He will be in Starkville this weekend to play the role of recruiter, I guess, with some of the transfer portal targets the State's going to be having in. State is still in the market for another transfer quarterback, and I believe that was communicated to Shapen as part of his offer. Is like, look, we're still looking. There's a chance that you might not be the starting quarterback. You're going to have the opportunity to compete for that job. And I guess, you think about Spencer Sanders this year and the situation that he came into. And so it's not like we haven't seen it before. A veteran quarterback comes in, but somebody, else is going to be the starting quarterback. But I will tell you that as we sit here today, December 11th, that Blake Shapen will have the opportunity to be Mississippi State's starting quarterback when the season rolls around in late August.
Blake Shapen has dealt with injuries in his career. Like, that's just been part of it. He played in 8 games this season, and he was 184 of 290, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So he completed just shy of 62% of his passes, averaging 273 yards a game. Now, he didn't go the full 12 games, but he did some good things throwing the football. And on the ground, he was, it was a net of 29 yards. But again, sack yardage factors in. He had 4 rushing touchdowns, and he gained 239 yards on the ground. So that tells you there's some mobility there. I don't know that you would classify him as a true running quarterback. Or
he's not a dual threat quarterback. No.
Yeah, we've almost gotten away from that term. I don't even think they're classified.
We really have
in recruiting circles. But yes, you're right.
Unless you are an elite passer, you better be a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing at a program that's going to put, an elite offensive line in front of you, you better be able to run the football just a little bit. And if you watch Shapen's highlights, he has some escapability. He can move around in the pocket. He can break some big runs. If nothing else, from an athleticism standpoint and from an arm strength standpoint, I would say he is an improvement over Will Rogers. So if that's your starting point, State is better at quarterback with Blake Shapen, just from those standpoints, than they were with Will Rogers.
Much better equipped to run the system. Tell me if you agree with it.
I think so.
I don't agree. The shock of the announcement, I think, was fair, because that wasn't a name that anybody brought up. Totally surprised. Wow, wait, hadn't heard this. Understandable. But there was a lot of negative reaction, and I thought that was completely unfair. In part because you've got people up here pumping Cam Ward, and then when they don't get Cam Ward, it's like, well, Lebby's a failure because he got this guy that has multiple years of starts at the Power 5 level and has shown the ability to run a system like this and is athletic and has a lot of talent. I found it disproportionate to reality.
I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of people were focused on Dylan Gabriel, the Oklahoma quarterback who had the connections with Lebby. We talked about him last week. We said he's scheduled to visit Mississippi State, but he's going to Oregon first. It's possible that visit never happens. That is exactly what happened, that he visited Oregon and he got the commitment. Gabriel was kind of the ceiling for Mississippi State. that was about the best they could possibly hope to do. Whereas with Shapen, and I'm not saying that he's the floor by any stretch of the imagination, but if Blake Shapen is kind of where you are, especially if you can continue to get another transfer quarterback in to compete with him, especially if you can get one that may be a little bit better than him, then that's a great pickup for Mississippi State. But I do think that there were a lot of people who really bought into the idea that Dylan Gabriel was going to turn down Oregon and come to Mississippi State. And I mean, I get why you thought that. I certainly understand why you think that Jeff Lebby's relationship would win out. But at the end of the day, Oregon is Oregon, and Mississippi State is in a rebuild right this second, and that's a tough sell, not only for Gabriel, but as you're going to see throughout this transfer portal process, it's going to be a tough sell for just about everybody, because when you're talking about guys who have 1 year left, they want to play for winners. They want to play for teams that they know are going to compete for the college football playoff next year, and that's not Mississippi State right in this second. They are not a team that's equipped to compete for a college football playoff spot right now.
So this season, Shapen missed 3 weeks early in the year with an MCL injury. So he played in the season opener against Texas State and then missed the next 3 weeks. He returned against UCF on the 30th of September, and then he missed the regular season finale with what was described as a head injury. Took a big shot in the TCU game. He had over 300 yards passing twice. He threw for over 300 against Texas State in the season opener and against Cincinnati on the 21st of October. But for all the other games, he was in that 240 to 290 range. So, pretty good. Put up good numbers through the air against Kansas State. He had 4 touchdown passes in that game, but 253 yards. Baylor just wasn't very good this year. Baylor dealt with some serious injuries, and so in the 8 games in which he played, they were 2-6, including 4 straight losses to Iowa State, Houston in overtime, Kansas State, and TCU. But again, if you look at his overall career numbers, last year and this year as the primary starting quarterback, he put up good numbers. He threw for almost 2,800 yards last year in 2022 with 18 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Played a little bit in 2021. So I'm trying to remember. 2021 is when Baylor played Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl.
He did not play.
He did not, but he had been playing at the end of the season, but then the time off allowed the guy who had been the starter to come back, right? Does that sound right?
Either way, the guy that played over him probably shouldn't have in hindsight.
It was Gary Bohannon, wasn't it?
And he was really bad that night, wasn't he?
I don't remember. Maybe so. I have completely wiped that game from my memory, so I'm sure Haydad can tell us play-by-play what happened, but I don't remember. Jeez.
If you might recall, I've discussed on this show, I was drugged on NyQuil and cough syrup when that game was going on.
Yeah,
so no,
he threw for 40 yards
recollection of it.
On 7 of 17.
Not great. Ole Miss defense was pretty good that night, but the offense, oof.